here, and Susie's just making sure that her audio doesn't play back and echo. So we'll be starting up in just a few minutes. And thank you all for joining us. We're so excited to get started. And I don't know how much we'll get through. We'll see what turns up in these files today. So hopefully we'll find some good information. And I think to start off with, what Susie's going to do is she's going to recount some of the Decipher U stuff that she had found earlier. So to catch me up and to catch some viewers up who might be new to these segments. So we'll get started with that as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's working. And yay, I've successfully stopped my audio from looping.
Nice.
Unless I'm speaking too soon. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Oh, cool. I can see people saying hi to us in the chat already. Awesome. We're trying to get a little bit more organized. We're definitely a lot closer to on time than usual, so I'm very pleased about that. I'm just going to get my little YouTube chat popped out so I can see what you guys are saying to us. Yay. Okay, so I thought what we would do today is to start with a little recap, because I think the fact that we're doing these streams is getting a bit more attention and a bit more reach. And I wanted people to have a way to see all of the really cool stuff that we've discovered in the Decipher U series so far. So as you guys know, the process is we study the documents together online. We collaborate to do that. And you guys in the YouTube chat are awesome at helping us research topics that we need to know more about. And then after the fact, I go away and I write up just in a few sentences for each point what the findings are that the conclusions we came to in the stream from studying the documents. So this series started by me blogging on decipheru.com, by me independently researching files and then blogging them there. And then it's evolved. Now we're on the 3rd out of 5 batches of documents. It's evolved into Elizabeth and I doing these live streams and actually showing the journalism in real time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share in a second. I'm just going to bring up decipheru.com. And I'm going to just quickly read you through the past discoveries from the series. And while we do that, if you guys saw the last stream, you'll see that we were talking about how we would really like to create like a meme series where we have a graphic image for each of the findings from the Decipher U series that we can circulate on social media and just more effectively share the information around. So as we go through each of the previous findings, we want to write just like a 1-sentence descriptor of each of the findings that we can then pass to some really talented graphic designers and have them create these memes. Once we've got through that process, then we are going to pick up with studying the documents from where we left off in the last session. So let's get started. So here we go. This part 1, this is from the first batch of the Snowden SIDToday files. So this just talks about what the SIDToday files are and the purpose of this article, or the purpose of the series. So I'm just going to bring up notes. Hold on, bear with me for 1 second. I'll just get my notes up so that I can write these little 1-sentences with you guys. Cool. Okay, now I'll share my desktop. Yay, and we should be there. Okay, so the very first finding from the Decipher U series. Right, so we discovered that a reference to something called the Target Office of Primary Interest, TOPI, and researching that term, TOPI, we could call it, I guess, led to an article on electrospaces.net which explained exactly what that is. So TOPI stands for Target Office of Primary Interest. According to an NSA document, TOPIs are part of the Analysis and Production Division, but Der Spiegel says there are units which are doing the actual interception. In this case, the TOPI has a designation, and that stands for the NSA CIA Special Collection Service. So bear in mind that in this case, the NSA and CIA are jointly collecting, which is interesting in the context of a later discussion that we'll have about how these agencies actually are effectively one and the same. It's actually a myth that they're in competition with each other. They work together very, very closely, which performs eavesdropping actions from inside US embassies in foreign capitals. And this designation refers to a unit based in the US Embassy in Berlin. So these are the specific Special Collection Service is the people who were famously revealed to have been spying on German Chancellor Angela Merkel's cell phone, among others. And there are interesting references that appear in the SIDToday files, which are from 2003. The NSA was already perturbed about the consequences of today's information overload, suggesting that analysts already had more data than they knew what to do with. However, this doesn't appear to have put a damper on the collector-all mentality on display a decade later. The following is key findings from analysis of the first batch of SIDToday files. Okay, so that's really more just background information than a specific finding. So this is actually the first finding. There is an oblique reference to Transformation 2.0, and we've heard a lot more about this term Transformation 2.0 in subsequent sessions, which in the context placed in. This is Transformation 2.0 is a post 9/11 pre-Patriot Act endeavor by the NSA to transform their organization, and not just their organization, but their customers and their network as well. Which in the context it is placed in reads as if it is some kind of NSA strategic directive or change management program. It is followed by talk of allowing people in other agencies with unique expertise to access data that they wouldn't otherwise be able to by having them swim upstream. So what this means is that post 9/11, NSA didn't just work more closely with partner agencies or share data with partner agencies. They're actually giving people direct access to NSA data sets that usually would not have had them. So any ideas for how we can turn that into
a meme?
Yeah. Somewhere between collector all and Transformation 2.0. Maybe just, let me try.
You have the dragnet mentality, and then you have a huge amount of information, then that's, like they said, dragnet, and then you have the NSA allowing that huge amount of information to be accessed by the other agencies. I don't know how you'd visually show that, but I think those are the 2 points going together there from what I'm hearing.
Post 9/11, intelligence agencies didn't just get better at sharing data, but allowed direct access to the NSA databases.
Definitely.
That might still be true.
So basically, I guess the 3 key points there are that they were getting more information, that this was the timing was around, just after 9/11, but before the Patriot Act, and that they were directly allowing more access than they had before, than other agencies had before.
Correct. Is the other agencies with unique expertise to access data that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. So they're giving them swimming upstream. Swimming upstream means going from their own systems into the NSA systems.
Okay.
So that's what I get from that, is that they were actually allowing partner agencies to directly access portions of NSA databases. And that's what's swimming upstream.
I guess, yeah.
Maybe we can actually just put that term swimming upstream.
Yeah, that could be a good visual to use for something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, the next one. The Director of Central Intelligence gives out denial and deception awards, and over 100 NSA employees were on the awards list.
Nice.
So the CIA actually gives awards to NSA staff or employees called denial and deception awards. Now you think about that in the context of like all this Russia hacking and attribution and everything else. So if you pretend to be a Russian hacker successfully and you work for NSA, you could actually be up for a denial and deception award from the CIA. Yeah. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it.
That's a great way to phrase it.
But having said that, we should probably stick to, and I guess we should probably put the source references to these documents into the memes as well, right?
Yeah, I think so.
In small text at the bottom, we should refer to the specific Snowden file.
Definitely, that would be the best.
That would be really, really powerful so that people understand that it's coming from a legit file and not just something that we're saying.
Yeah, I remember it was very difficult when WikiLeaks was releasing the Podesta emails. Sometimes people would post fake emails. And yeah, it was sometimes confusing for people to understand which was real and which wasn't unless they had the ID number.
Cool. Okay, so for each of these, then I will put the source document.
Yeah, and I think anything that's getting people to possibly go look at the original files themselves is always a good thing. So.
Okay, denial and deception awards. I proudly congratulate this year's recipients of the Director of Central Intelligence Denial and Deception Awards. Next one. As far back as 2003, the US relationship with Turkey was seriously weakened, and the US was unlikely to champion Turkey's cause with Europe. And again, when we put this in context with what we know from other documents, we know that the expanding European Union was considered the #1 strategic threat to the NSA, which would mean that they already wouldn't want to see the European Union growing any larger than it was. But this is basically saying the US did not want Turkey to become a part of the European Union.
Yeah, that is one of the most surprising things we've looked at. For me, was to hear that the EU was the #1 threat strategically. That completely boggled my mind, and we went over that before.
And again, when we look at more current events in relation to this Turkey stuff, it really contextualizes it because not just the revelations of US shipping weapons and supplies to ISIS through Turkey, but also the so-called Turkey coup attempt, which was essentially traced back to the United States.
Yeah,
many people believe the United States was responsible for.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if William covered that specific part of things, but I know that he wrote a pretty in-depth article on Turkey a few months ago. So if anyone's interested in that, they can go look it up. But
Turkey is really significant in the Serena Shim case. I mean, it was basically her reporting on Turkey and surrounding events that led to her assassination. Okay, next one. The files show an obsession with controlling the flow of information to Congress, to congressional overseers, and adherence to established protocols for responding to requests from them. These seem to be largely budget related. In a document titled SID's Interactions with Congress, Setting the Budget, there is a reference to a 761-page congressional budget justification book for the 2004 fiscal year and an explanation of budget markup. So they prepare a book that they give to Congress when they are asking for their budget for the next year. And that book, a justification book, is 761 pages long. So maybe they're just trying to swamp Congress, because what congressman is going to want to read 761 pages, right? Like they're probably going to read the executive summary and then like sign on the dotted line.
Exactly.
It's unlikely that many Congress people would actually read through that entire novel.
Yeah.
In a document titled SID's Interaction with Congress Communications, there is a reference to opportunities to influence the markups in the budget. So they're actually talking about ways to suck more money out of Congress. And it is stressed that Congress should hear both good news as well as bad news from us before they read it in the paper. Bad news includes power outages that have resulted in degradation of service or security breaches at field stations, which in theory means that congressional overseers learned about the Snowden leaks before reading them in the Washington Post or in the Guardian.
That's a huge point. I don't know how you turn that into a meme, but it's a massive point.
I think that we split that into two because there's two documents. Yeah. So the first one is that the NSA dumps a 761-page book to justify its budget request to Congress. So well, I mean, this is the key point too, is that they're actually obsessed with controlling the flow of information to them. Because in that document, I haven't written it up well here, but in that document, they're actually they're going step by step through the different internal barriers they have to any communications with Congress. They have like multiple groups, like little task forces that are to prevent anyone from in NSA having any direct direct contact with the overseers. So like you have to talk to the like liaison office, and then the liaison office have to talk to the management office, and then the management office have to prepare this thing and, you know, brief for Congress. And there's all these steps.
So it's a lot of bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's all about literally controlling the flow of information. So it's well known within NSA that you don't even speak a word about Congress or to Congress without going through the liaison office and the management office and the blah, 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 and who then do it on their behalf. So maybe it's simply every year the NSA authors a massive book, and then we can say in 2003, 761 pages, called a Congressional Budget Justification Book in order to secure their funding.
Definitely.
Prepares a book in 2003, 761 pages, called their Congressional Budget Justification Book in order to secure funds from Congress.
And when they do that, are they competing with other agencies for funding? And is that one reason that they would write that type of length? Or do you think it's more that they were just trying to, like you said, you know, get the Congress members to treat this like the Apple terms and conditions and not read it?
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. I think it's literally the terms and conditions for the NSA budget.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah. Nobody reads the Apple or any other company's terms and conditions, or Facebook's or anything. So
I just find it impossible to believe that the Congressional Oversight Committee sits there and reads 761 pages. They may well have like some aides who have to read it or something like this, you know, but it's very unlikely that they read the entire thing themselves.
Yeah, very.
Okay. I mean, we can refine these later on anyway, but we're just trying to drill down for the moment. And then the next one, the NSA talks about having opportunities to influence the markups in their budget.
So that's all about that one is focusing again on money for sure.
But specifically on how they can beef up their budget and get more money.
Exactly, yeah.
An NSA document discusses opportunities to influence the markups. In their budget proposals in order to secure more, in order to get more government money.
And I think that even though that doesn't sound great to the average taxpayer, I think that's pretty standard practice for the different intelligence agencies, isn't it? I mean, they're all wanting to get as much money as they can for whatever projects they have going.
Well, if you take this back to all of the language in the documents being business language and them considering the people that they give intelligence to as customers, then yes, essentially they would consider Congress as their funders, as their shareholders that would inject money into the company. I mean, they call themselves the company.
Yeah,
so where does a company get money from? A company that has to make money from customers, or it has to get shareholders or funders to invest money in them. And in this case, that would be the congressional oversight committees or the Congress itself. So I think they would just try and basically squeeze them for every dollar that they could get, and that would be considered good business. Like the more the merrier kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
How are we going in chat, you guys?
Pretty well. I think Blake's just sharing our social media handles and whatnot.
Very cute. Okay, so next one. And then there's more on the same topic. In profiles, SIG legislative affairs, this is expanded upon. The writer states that the Signals Intelligence Directorate must be proactive with Congress in providing notifications, and that the Legislative Affairs Office will advise affected officers of any funding impacts and will assist you with preparing reclaimers to adverse funding language. So what they're saying here is that in your budget, in the budget requests of the various departments, that like here, actually, I've given the definition. Reclaimers are, to paraphrase Merriam-Webster, requests for reconsideration of a policy directive or decision. Use of the term is prevalent within military circles and related organizations. So if they make a request that affects them in terms of fund or has a funding impact upon them, that they can then make requests for reconsideration.
Okay, yeah.
But adverse funding language. So, adverse funding language. So if they've stated something in a way that ends up in a budget decrease rather than a budget increase, then they go and file these reclaimers with Congress asking for reconsideration of the decision. Essentially, it's like an appeals process.
Yeah.
The document says that all congressional overseers should adhere to the 5 C's. So this is in their funding requests, namely candid, complete, correct, consistent, and corporate.
Corporate, that's lovely.
Yes. They must use corporate language. So I am assuming that the candid, complete, correct, consistent part, well, consistent will be to avoid issues, but the candid, complete, correct is probably relates to something in the National Intelligence Act. I would imagine, National Security Intelligence Act. because in that act outlines their responsibilities and their reporting to overseers. So I'd say that's a compliance thing rather than them being like, yeah, we really want to be truthful. I mean, they've already said that, you know, they're aware of, or they're hyper aware of adverse funding language, you know, reducing their budgets or having funding impacts on them.
Definitely.
But yes, corporate.
Yeah, that word really, really sticks out to me for sure.
The Legislative Affairs Office will advise affected officers of any funding impacts and will assist you with preparing reclaims. So if a NSA department's funding is cut, their Legislative Affairs Office will file appeals on their behalf. I think that's the best way.
I wonder if they're only able to do that once, or if they're able to do this multiple times. So if Congress doesn't approve some type of funding that they want, and they appeal it, I wonder if can they go back and appeal it again? Until
I have no idea. Appeals.
Another thing that that pops into my head that would be useful for this particular section of statements about funding is just to, if somebody could look up at, the amount of money that or the percentage of our taxes, American taxes, that go to the NSA and intelligence agencies. I think that would be a cool number just to have.
I personally think there's some creative accounting that goes on.
Oh, absolutely. No, I assume that's a given in my mind.
The NSA budget is that large. I think in my head, I think it's like 8 billion or something, or like it's actually not like compared to like the Pentagon or something. It's actually not that big. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's because all of the customers of the NSA will have their own budgets and aren't related to NSA.
Okay.
NSA is purely a collections budget.
That makes sense.
Yeah, from memory, I don't think it's anywhere near the size of the CIA budget either. I think it's like a fraction of the CIA budget. And if you think like when they're talking about all the deployments and stuff, there's generally like one NSA employee on a team of 10 or 15 people being deployed.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's kind of like a rough fractional percentage. But by all means, absolutely. What would be the most interesting is to know if there has been any NSA funding cuts, which I personally don't think there has been, at least since 2001. But it would be interesting to know. So... Next. Oh, this is horrible. Oh my God, this is horrible. In crisis support for employees, SIDToday incongruously, what is with me in pronunciation tonight? Incongruously states in back-to-back sentences that employees can seek help with obtaining weapons training and with potential employee suicides from the same department. So the department that you go to get trained in how to use weapons is the same department that you go to if you're concerned that someone's going to kill themselves.
Wow. So this means that, yeah, that's insane. That's absolutely horrific.
Let's read the actual document because it's quite fascinating. Crisis support for employees. Where can you turn for information when you've been told you'll be deploying to a hostile area and need weapons training? What if you think someone you supervise is contemplating suicide? How can your family find out about benefits they may be eligible for if you are injured or killed on the job? Would you like to learn how to cope with shift work or donate blood to aid victims of disaster or get help settling a dispute with a coworker? The Associate Director for Human Resources Human Resource Services has compiled a listing of websites to support employees who are facing potentially stressful situations. They've brought together the information published separately, as well as a whole bunch of crap, including the US Office of Personnel Management. We know who they are.
Okay, yeah.
They're the ones that lost their entire database. There's a checklist to prepare you and your family for your absence during a TDY, information on blah, 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 blah. You can find all of this by going to the SIG and People Office website. So basically they funnel all of that through HR.
Interesting.
We may never back down from those threatening our lives and our freedom, but we sometimes need to step back for a moment to make sure we're taking care of our best weapon in the fight, ourselves. So crisis support. So that seems to suggest that they actually don't have some kind of like in-house health services, or because that seems very unusual, right? That you're thinking of killing yourself, so you have to go to HR.
It makes very little sense to me that they would not have some sort of counseling resource on its own, for sure. That's very odd.
They've brought together information published separately by HRS, Human Resources, as well as Occupational Health, Environmental Services, and the OPM, US Office of Personnel Management, and others. So this suggests that occupational health is probably what we're talking about, but that you have to access it through the HR department. And then you can almost be guaranteed that that's going to go on your record with the US Office of Personnel Management.
So, and this would be the same thing if you were deployed somewhere and you felt like you had been exposed to asbestos or something. Would it be the same process of going through this type of thing? Like, has everything been condensed into that one group, or is it just the mental health that they're using this for?
I'm not sure. The document is called Crisis Support for Employees, and then it refers to the Associate Directorate for Human Resource Services as having brought together these different...
Like, that's where occupational health is what I'm trying to refer to there, is if you had some sort of occupation on the job issue, health-wise, like physically, would you go to them as well? Or is this just the suicide crisis type situation?
You would think occupational health would be anything related to the performance of their job. Like, so anything from I've sprained my wrist and can't type to such and such, I think such and such is going to kill themselves. Yeah. But it seems suspiciously to me like they're funneling this is like what they've said up here, you know, they're funneling everything through a single point of entry, and that single point of entry appears to be HR.
And it seems like it sets up an unnecessary boundary to people trying to get help with whatever type of problem. For sure.
Points of contact for organisations that can provide the support you need to maintain your well-being through this lengthening period of increased vigilance. That does sound very much like HR is the portal to all of those support services.
Which that sets up a kind of layer of red tape to getting help.
Well, I think what that suggests is that HR wants to be across your access to any of these services. They want to know what services you're accessing.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I assume that those individual groups would also report back to HR or anything as well. But I would think that's a huge barrier. I mean, how many people are going to want to seek mental health services through the NSA if they know it's going to go on their permanent record? and they know that HR, directorate is going to know about it.
Yeah, we talked about in I think the first stream I did with you, we talked about the document from just after the Iraq War, where they had a what is a sharp increase in well, they had to make a document that addressed people being totally broken down. Yeah.
Yeah, massive amounts of overtime, that's true. Okay, so how do we put that in a sentence? I mean, maybe we don't need like a meme for everything. I mean, I think we should probably cut these down to like the best 10 once we get through them.
Yeah. I think you could summarize that in just saying that maybe the NSA makes it more difficult and less private, or to access mental health care or health care. Would that summarize that in a sentence?
I don't think we can say that it's more or less private because we don't know the specific.
That's true.
Like, we don't know exactly what information they're collecting or whatnot. Maybe it could be argued that the HR director is bringing all those services together to try and make them more accessible to people.
Yeah, that could be an opposite, definitely, for sure.
I'm actually not sure that I could confidently like turn that one into a meme.
Mm-hmm.
I think like my gut instinct is that we don't know enough about that.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about what is the net effect when they reach out. I mean, what this is basically saying is it's pretty weird that they have a document that says in one sentence, if you want weapons training, and then in the next sentence it says, if you think someone's going to kill themselves.
Yeah, that is very odd.
That's odd, because what a strange way to put a document together. Like, what, to put those two references next to each other is very strange, which is why, like, I've put incongruously states in back-to-back sentences. It's almost like they weren't aware that it's really weird that they're stating it this way. But I don't think that we can draw any conclusions about what the process is once somebody reaches out for services through that. We don't have the information yet. And that's not to say we won't find it in other documents, because we may well. There may well be a whole bunch of HR process documents relating to this that we haven't come across yet. And I think the fact that they have weirdly put those sentences together in a document is not actually sufficient for a meme, even though it is weird that they did it. Okay, moving along. As early as November of 2003, SIDToday was announcing that elements of the exit strategy for Iraq, referred to in the document as Phase 4, were already underway. In the document titled Post-War Iraq Plan, key responsibilities mentioned include maintaining domestic security, watching for efforts to undermine the nascent Iraqi government, and uncovering war criminals. Well, they might have needed a mirror for that. Definitely. These tasks are stated to have been complicated by much broader international participation. So the NSA wanted to, as far back as November 2003, NSA was already implementing the exit strategy for Iraq, which included uncovering war criminals. I'm really tempted to stick like a photo of Tony Blair on that meme.
Yeah. When they wrote that, were they referring to war criminals that would be, Iraqi? Is that what they're trying to refer to there?
Obviously. Yeah. But it's ironic. It's ironic because I'm not sure if you were here for this, but in one of the later documents, one of the generals is signing off on every single targeting mission because he's concerned about being charged with war crimes. So they went from wanting to uncover war criminals in 2003 to, in later years, being seriously concerned that they themselves would be charged with war crimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one would be, it sounds like very easy to turn into a meme of something like,
That's of November 2003.
Holding a mirror or something.
NSA was implementing their exit strategy. It's like amusing to even read it. They're implementing the exit strategy for Iraq, which included uncovering war criminals. Anyone who reads that is going to just scoff, instantly.
Definitely.
And ironically, NSA would be the ones that are actually well placed enough to be able to find the real war criminals. Since, Snowden said that he even could access the email addresses of Obama, that means that NSA could access the email addresses of George Bush and Tony Blair. Oh, wow, yay, my life is revolutionized. I can actually drag that stupid thing off. Cool. Now, next. Sometimes it is easy to forget just how far back this type of spying goes. In a document titled "SID Support to Prisoner of War Rescue," particularly that of Jessica Lynch. Do you remember the Jessica Lynch case?
I do remember that.
Yeah. PFC Lynch, I believe it was. There is a reference to SIGINT reporting on the location of an Iraqi general hospital dating back to 1979. Of course, the history of the NSA goes back even further, formally to 1952, but in its historical forefather was its earliest incarnation established in 1917.
That's interesting. Huh.
1952 is interesting because that Wikipedia page I found about the UK-USA agreement, where it said that the Australian Prime Minister was not aware that the Five Eyes was information sharing with Australia for 27 years, was not aware. I believe that agreement was found in 1946. So that means from 1946 to 1952, that intelligence sharing was already happening, even though there was no NSA. So I wonder what predates the NSA. Oh, that reminds me, actually, probably some military intelligence or something like that. But that reminds me, in the last, I wanted to make a correction to the last stream where I was talking, I got confused about the DIA. I was talking about them doing a daily report to the president of a summation of all the intelligence. It was not DIA, it was DNI. And that's what James Clapper is, which is National Intelligence, Director of National Intelligence. And that was the office that was established post-2001 with that job of bringing together the reports of all of the intelligence agencies and reporting on it to the president. So apologies for getting my acronyms mixed up. I was talking about DNI, but I used the term DIA, so that's my bad.
The alphabet soup, sometimes it just gets difficult to keep straight every once in a while, but.
Correct. Okay, so the key point here is that they are utilizing SIGINT reporting from 30 years prior, or I guess in this case, 25 years prior. And that SIGINT reporting was on a hospital, which is supposed to be off limits. But I guess nowhere on the planet is off limits to the NSA.
Apparently not.
So, one NSA document refers to making use of intercepts, or not intercepts, signals intelligence, SIGINT from 1979 of the Iraqi General Hospital. So SIGINT from 25 years earlier in 1979. Okay. It just yet again illustrates the permanent nature of their collections.
Absolutely.
I mean, you think about like how many people are still likely to have been there in 2004, 2005 from 1979. So the information that NSA agents are collecting could be used literally by future generations.
Definitely.
Okay, so that was it for part 1. And then part 2 gets a bit more interesting. So the second batch, and bearing in mind all these things I'm listing are only things that had not appeared in the original reporting.
Yeah, no, that's what's so really interesting about these issues that are raised in what you've done. Is it's, as you said, it's stuff that hasn't been reported on before, and that's why somebody needs to look at it. So. Totally.
Okay, so this I thought was a really major finding, one of the biggest findings so far. And that's that I don't know if you've heard this, I think you have. A lot of people derided Snowden's story because they said that he is a limited hangout operation by the CIA with the motive of discrediting the NSA. Yeah, that the CIA wanted him in the NSA because the CIA wants to undermine and embarrass the NSA, and that he is just part of an interagency struggle. Now, I knew that that was not the case. And sure enough, in the documents, it illustrates exactly why that is not the case. And that is because it is a total myth that the CIA is at war or competing with the NSA. Actually, it's like apples and oranges. Like, one can never be the other. And what they do is very, very different. And the way that they do it is very different. But they are both integral to each other. So the documents specifically state, rather than it being strange, as many suggested, that Snowden moved from CIA to the NSA, the exchange of human resources between the agencies seems common. In fact, the SIDToday files lay waste to the theory that the CIA and NSA are in competition with each other, or that they aspire to usurp each other's roles and resources. The documents consistently depict the agencies working in partnership as the left and the right hands of the executive. One
amazing phrase.
Yeah, one specializes in collecting the information. The other specializes in acting on it. So the CIA is operational on the ground. The NSA is the like nerds in the back room feeding the information to the guys who are acting on the ground. Multiple documents announce appointments from senior executives on down to analysts, moving between one agency and the other. As revealed in the last part of the series, the CIA even gave service awards to over 100 NSA employees. This document refers to a retired NSA senior executive with significant CIA experience and details NSA staff members attending classes at the CIA, which the director of the CIA participated in. Quoting the document, the tone of the class was set on the first full day of presentations with a discussion led by the Honourable George J. Tenet, DCI, Director of Central Intelligence. So they study together, they work together, their senior management and their analysts go back and forth between the two agencies. So you have a bunch of NSA guys at CIA and you have a bunch of CIA guys at NSA. So this idea that they are not only that they are at war with each other, but that they would cook up this like whole whistleblower operation and have Snowden, exiled in Russia just to make the NSA look bad is completely nuts. Because effectively making the NSA look bad is making the CIA look bad. And Snowden has talked about his own CIA experience and his own NSA experience. So actually, I think he's been a thorn in the side of both agencies and not in one. I'll just put on two. I didn't actually discuss it here because here I'm directly relating to the contents of the documents, but another lie that gets told about Snowden is that people say that he's never shined any light on the CIA. He's never said anything bad about the CIA. He's never revealed anything about the CIA. And that's total nonsense. Total nonsense. One of the first stories that he told was about being in, was it Switzerland, I believe, or somewhere like that, and is talking about CIA agents, the lengths that they were going to flip informants, and how they were setting them up on drink driving charges, and they were doing all of these nefarious, underhanded and illegal things in order to turn them into informants for the US government. I mean, that's just one example. If you go back and actually watch, you know, Snowden's appearances, study his words, you find that he has taken on the entire network of intelligence agencies across the board. And so this is just this type of smears that get circulated about him, you know, that he's a CIA plan or plot, or that he doesn't speak about the CIA. These things are not at all true. And we can see from the content of these documents the real nature of the relationship between the CIA and NSA.
And even if you just hypothetically thought about what would be going on if the CIA was trying to embarrass the NSA, that would be one thing. But to reveal all of these practices, it would also, even if they were trying to compete with the NSA and create their own version of what the NSA does, revealing the NSA's actual operational methods and whatnot would still make it more difficult for them to somehow compete with them, because they would assumedly be using similar methods. So it doesn't make sense either way you look at it. At least that's why I take it. But
absolutely,
like you would think that even if they're trying to embarrass the NSA, they would not be wanting to reveal the type of really damaging information about methods that Snowden's documents show.
And about strategy. So these strategic documents that we've been studying are talking like about, you know, the next 15 years of strategy, not just of the NSA, but of the entire US government. So, because that's where these orders are coming down from. So when they're talking about, you know, the expansion of the European Union being, and the economic strength of the European Union being the number one strategic threat to the US government, that's not just NSA, that's also CIA, that's all of the other agencies. So and you're correct that the information, and that's why I said, you know, I get like troll number 5,240 telling me, oh, Snowden is just a fake CIA operation, blah, 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 blah. And I said, like, no one who has studied these documents, and they're like, oh, well, you know, I've read everything that, you know, the New York Times ever published about. No, I'm sorry, the documents, not what the New York Times published, not what Guardian published. No one who's ever studied the content of these documents could ever believe that this is some kind of fake operation. Because the documents are so like raw and like flavorful. It's like you can tell they're talking internally between themselves with the things that they're discussing. And I mean, all the top secret markings and that stuff is like legitimate secrets that they would not want anybody getting their hands on.
Yeah, but and I think that the problem with that explanation for Snowden that people have is that it ties everything up way too neatly. It's too simple. Reality is never that simple. Like, you can't just have a nice little explanation with in 2 sentences. And but I think that's why people hold on to that or like grab onto it easily, is because it just sums it up in a very black and white soundbite. So.
And also, I personally believe, and I see this all the time with WikiLeaks and whatnot, like, if you believe the smears against WikiLeaks, it exonerates you from having to take any risks.
Exactly, and do the research.
So it's like, oh, well, Julian Assange is an asshole, so therefore I don't have to risk my life supporting WikiLeaks. I won't have to worry about getting targeted myself. I won't have to, discomfort myself in any way because he's an asshole and therefore I don't have to support him. Like, this is just, it's like there are so many benefits to not taking a moral stand, and there are so many hardships for taking the moral stand that there's a lot of reasons. It's very convenient for people to disengage
Definitely.
There's many benefits to disengaging. And I mean, for some of these journalists that write these hit pieces, it's a career move. Literally, they will be raised up within these publishing organizations because they write smears about WikiLeaks, because they write smears about Snowden.
That's unfortunately really true. You see that all the time.
Okay, so how to summarize this? I think we should just simply state it as a refutation. So this. So we say, no, the CIA is not at war with the NSA. There is a revolving door between the organizations. Well, we should start with the basics. The NSA collects data. The CIA launches operations.
Yes. That's a really good basic understanding that people need to have.
There is a revolving door between the organizations, from senior execs down to analysts.
I think having an image of if we're talking actual like memes with, as opposed to charts, I think having like you said, the left and right hand. Yeah, that would be really, that's a very obvious but effective visual to have.
We can put the executive in the middle.
I think, one classic thing to do with that is, you can have obviously the different fingers could represent different things too.
Good, okay. Where is this? Blake, you holding us down in YouTube chat?
Awesome. Thank you, Blake.
Yeah, Donna, just about this like smear thing as well. There's actually more proof, okay? What does the CIA do when they want to smear someone? They create a sex scandal of some description. They attack them personally. They go after individuals. So like if the CIA wanted to take on the NSA, they would go after the director of the NSA personally. They would go after the organization systemically. Like they would go after the power structure. They would go after this type of thing. They wouldn't like air US government secrets willy-nilly, like massive amounts of them. Is completely no way that they would do that. So that just, yet again, if you look at CIA standard tactics for discrediting targets, and NSA too, I'd love to go right through the JTRIG files with you guys one day, which are all about how they target and discredit people that they don't like. And nowhere in there does it say leak massive amounts of government secrets. It's like set up honeypots, like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not leak of however many documents, so. Okay, bloated overstatement over the historical significance of the Iraq war effort is rife in SIDToday. In a document titled Driving History, oh, this is right, oh my God, the NSA likens its participation in the Iraq war to the cracking of the Enigma code in World War II.
Wow.
The publication claims that history will see the role of NSA in the global war on terrorism in a similar light to the cryptographic breakthrough that won World War II for the Allies. I'm not feeling that in 2017.
No, definitely not.
2017, I've actually never heard a single person say, wow, the NSA did a great job in Iraq.
Yeah, no, it's more like one of the biggest embarrassments, I think.
In human history.
Yeah, really.
Several documents assert how great it is that democracy has been brought to Iraq. 13 years on, it is clear that the actual historical record on the conflict is a far cry from what the NSA had predicted it would be. The Iraqi theatre remains, of course, an unmitigated disaster.
Absolutely.
How do we stick that into one sentence? Any suggestions, you guys?
the arrogance here just blows you away. Like that level of just absolute unironic arrogance is just mind-blowing. I don't know how to put that into a sentence very well.
It's so wordy, that's why.
Yeah, it's just there's so much there that it's difficult to boil it down any further, really. You could have two images next to each other. Like one is like what the NSA thinks they're doing, and then like the reality, and have like, you know, the leveled disaster zone that Iraq is now, and then have on, you know, in the first image, like have them, you know.
Your first image can be George Bush on the aircraft carrier, mission accomplished.
Exactly. Yeah.
With a big 2004 written across the top, and like 2017 deploying troops to like,
yeah.
The NSA claimed their role in Iraq was as important as the cryptographic breakthrough that won World War II.
So you could have an image of like what the NSA thinks they're doing, and then have some sort of image of like a person trying to crack a code like the Enigma or whatever in some way, like with a typewriter or whatever, and then have the devastation in the next picture and say what they're actually achieving. But that is definitely insane that they would compare that to the Enigma, breaking the Enigma code.
Okay. NSA said history will see its role in Iraq
or compares
its role in Iraq as being as important as the cracking of the Enigma code. And celebrated democracy being brought to Iraq. It's the easiest way I can think of. I'd still like to do a lot less words, so we'll just have to refine these like later down. Look at Blake. Blake's like, plug your charger in before your laptop goes flat. Now, what, Blake? At the beginning of the stream, which was only, what, an hour ago, my laptop was at 100% charged.
Interesting.
And now my laptop is at 5% charged. And yet my laptop battery should last for like 8 hours or more.
Yeah.
So maybe we have some visitors.
Well, if you take a break and go plug it in, I'll be happy to.
I'm down for a 5-minute break if you want to keep going. That would be cool.
Yeah. I'll just
to just grab some tea. So I'll find a charger and grab some tea, and I'll be right back.
Sure.
And if you guys, I have, as usual, I've completely ignored Twitter. So if you guys want to like send some tweets, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I won't keep reading through because I wasn't the one that compiled these notes, but I'll just, you know, talk while you're gone.
Okay, I'll be right back, guys.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, a number of these stories, these issues that are coming up really need to be looked into further. I would really like, if anybody has any questions that they'd like others to research or us to research, then please throw those into the YouTube chat. Because just from my own knowledge, like I'm interested in a lot of these points that Suzie's brought up, and I'd like to know more about them. And why do you think that the NSA would compare itself to breaking the Enigma code? That just boggles my mind. Anyway, and does anybody, if anybody can look up what the predecessor agency was for the NSA, that would be great. Because I remember in the point Suzie mentioned a few minutes ago, she was talking about how it the very first SIGINT information was collected in 1917, and I'm wondering what agency collected that. So that'd be great. And then I know that at Decipher Media, I know William has written a couple of articles on Turkey. So if anybody's interested in that subject that we talked about a little while ago, you can go read that article. But oh yeah, and so since we were discussing people's perception that Snowden is working on behalf of the CIA to against the NSA, if anybody can pull up links that we can use to talk about to show where Snowden has talked about his experience with the CIA, as far as like Suzie was talking about, where they were trying to set up drunk driving charges with people that they were against. That would be really useful for just my own research and to be able to explain to other people when you come across that type of either uninformed person or person trying to smear Snowden. So, and if anybody can find or research any examples of the CIA and NSA working together, that would also strengthen that point, I think, that there wouldn't be a reason to undermine each other in that type of in that way that would be exposing programs that possibly both agencies use, or that the type of methods that both agencies would want to be able to use. That would be really interesting. So I'm going to check the YouTube chat to see what questions anybody has. Okay, so Paul is telling me that the Army Security Agency is the precursor to today's National Security Agency. That's really interesting. When did that start? Was it in 1917, or was it before that, or was it after that? And then okay, interesting. And I don't know if any of you were here in the last stream we did, but I remember that we went over some information about Pine Gap in one of the documents. And I remember that there was an odd redaction. And so if anybody had any thoughts about what that redaction was, I'd really like to hear it, because we could not figure it out at all. It just seemed really incongruous, because what they'd done is they had a paragraph that was not classified. It was unclassified, and it had an entire sentence redacted. So Suzie and I couldn't really fathom what would be redacted for an entire sentence in a publicly available sort of in a non-classified section of this non-classified almost brochure for Pine Gap. So okay, Paul says that the Army Security Agency was in 1971. I wonder what was operating in 1917 that was collecting the signals intelligence information. Okay, 1930. Interesting. Thanks, Paul. So if any of you have any questions or anything that you've watched in the last few streams that you thought was really interesting or that you want an answer on, feel free to throw them at me while we're waiting for Suzie to grab her charger and whatnot. And I'm gonna, while I'm waiting for Suzie to come back, I'm just gonna tweet out our stream again.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just tweeting some stuff as well.
Sorry about the playback. I opened Twitter and it was just instantly started playing there for some reason. Yeah, and as for what Suzie was saying a little just recently about the difference between exposing operational methods and programs and slandering one individual or high-level people, I think that's a really, really interesting point, not just because it would be more standard practice for the NSA or the CIA to smear individuals that they wanted to take out in order to play, you know, sort of power games with each other. It's also just interesting, as Suzie kind of mentioned, because you just see that over and over with whistleblowers. And so the issue with that is that the same exact targeting sort of methods are used over and over again. It's usually, I think Suzie said this, it's usually a character attack. It wouldn't be an entire agency's methods of surveillance. It would be so-and-so is an alcoholic who beats his wife, or, you know, in whatever type of personal attack they can create. And that's why, and to compare that to the attack, you can compare that to like the attack against WikiLeaks that happened, I believe, last year, where the company Todd and Claire was attempting to smear Assange with allegations that he was a pedophile or something. And CNN even aired that as if it was a true fact, and they had to retract it eventually. But the point is that you see that type of character assassination attempt over and over and over again with various people that support WikiLeaks or are whistleblowers or supporters of whistleblowers. And so that's, I think that's how you can tell that that person is maybe even doing a good job, is that they get that type of attack. As opposed to, I don't think that any agency would want these types of methods and practices and this information out. I don't, you know, even if there was some sort of competition between these agencies, I don't see that being practical in their interests. So, but I think, as I said earlier, I think that the explanation for Snowden and saying, the explanation for Snowden's actions, i.e. saying that he's just some sort of CIA limited hangout plant, is so much simpler for people. And it ignores the information that's in the files. And it like Suzie was saying, it allows people to disengage from the true content. So even if you completely ignore the fact that he most likely was completely genuine, even if you think he isn't genuine, the files are real, the content is real. And so by just dismissing him as a person, then you dismiss all of the content. And the same thing happens with WikiLeaks. When people don't, and as Suzie said, you know, if people don't like Assange, then they're ignoring the fact that what Assange has published and WikiLeaks has published is all 100% verified information. So even if those individuals were not somebody that you liked, the information you still have to deal with, because and people too often make the person giving the message more important than the message they're giving, or they dismiss the real content just because of an opinion or an emotion about the person who is delivering it. And that it makes it a lot easier because you don't have to spend the time dealing with what the contents tell you. So, and it makes it easier as well, because what all of these files are showing, whether it's Snowden files or WikiLeaks, it's showing that there is serious corruption, and there is a serious problem with obviously our intelligence agencies and the amount of power they have. And all of these types of topics are very uncomfortable, because I think essentially they make people feel powerless when they have to recognize that these issues are actually happening. And that I think it doesn't give people a clear way to act. And that's why it's so much emotionally easier to just dismiss the content. But Yeah, no, CNN was horrible when they actually aired that, and then they didn't immediately retract it. It took, I think WikiLeaks had to threaten a lawsuit against them before they retracted it properly.
And I seem to remember, just to jump back in, I seem to remember that they didn't just like make the claim, they actually had like one of those CIA guys on to talk about it, right?
That's who made the claim. Yeah, they aired him making that statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's jump back into it.
All right, cool.
Screen browser, hold on. Okay, next. Analysts want to see data the way that the user saw it, says one document, explaining the concept of a native view of data being viewed in the same environment as the target experienced it, as if through their eyes. It states a need to enhance this view with easy access to analytical tools. So what I take native view in a software development term to mean is that they literally see your desktop. So if you have a Windows desktop, they're looking at your Windows desktop. If you have an Apple like me, they'll be looking at my Apple desktop, which you guys are all looking at as well, because I'm literally sharing it at the moment. So they want to view what you view as a user exactly as you viewed it.
Yeah, and I believe I remember Snowden talking about a similar thing with Facebook, where he said that they would not only see what you sent to someone, but they would even be able to see you typing and then deleting something. So if there's something you wrote in a chat that you go, oh, I don't want to send that, they'll see you actually typing it out, and they'll know what your thought process is more than the person you're even speaking to. So that's really disturbing.
There's several different ways that they can do this as well.
Yeah.
So there's that they remotely access your computer in real time, and they could sit there and watch you. Or there is that they can record your screen view, and then they can either run algorithms through it to pull out like moments that where you're actually typing a specific keyword that is of interest to them, or they can do what the hacking team software does, which is where they will set a periodic screen capture. So in the hacking team software, which is used by police agencies and private agencies around the world, they could say every 30 seconds or every 3 seconds or every 12 seconds, we want a screen cap of the user desktop. And so that they can capture it that way. So if you're sitting there watching Britney Spears videos all night, they aren't going to sit there and watch Britney Spears videos with you all night. But if you are in like happened to me many times, in WordPress, writing a blog post about things that they're very interested in, and they will review that, they will capture that information. So I'm trying to think of how to put this like into a meme format. They don't just want to know what you did, they want to see you doing it as you did it. I think that's the easiest way.
It's like, it's not just what you do, it's how you do it. At least that's the essential message I get from it. It's not just the end result, it's the process. So
oh, I just realized I totally forgot that link. Okay. The NSA don't just want to know what you did, they watch you do it.
Yeah, that's a great way to phrase that.
And study how. And there's the file.
And that's what people need to know, honestly. Like, I think it would get a lot more people emotionally involved in this if they understood it's not just like, oh, if you have a secret, then they're going to be maybe watching you. It's literally everyone's thought process they're collecting.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. It's the psychology of it. It's entirely like psychological. As part of the profiling, right? They're profiling you psychologically based on your thoughts, and your thoughts as you express them, your thoughts as you think them, your thoughts as you alter them. Like, as you say, when you're deleting something or whatever else, they capture all of that. It's ridiculously creepy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get complacent when they think, oh, yeah, they're drag-knitting all of this, but they don't really look at it. They're not looking at me, you know?
Okay, multiple documents in the case brag about NSA's contributions to capture and kill operations in Iraq.
Interesting.
So this is the next level stuff. So they're not just watching. There are actions being taken on the basis of the information that they are collecting. Capture and kill operations in this case. This document in particular states that NSA analysts on the ground in Baghdad witnessed the importance of translating signals intelligence for the tactical commanders to help them understand how the SIGINT could serve as the basis for military operations. So for the basis, so this isn't the CIA saying we're going to capture and kill this person and therefore let's get some SIGINT. This is the tactical commander saying we have the SIGINT and therefore let's capture and kill this person.
Exactly.
It continues. In the last 6 months, tactical units have captured, killed, or wounded tens of thousands of insurgent forces in Iraq. And where did those insurgent forces come from? How did they come about? They came about as a direct result of the US invasion.
Absolutely.
Iraq, and of what they did to the country, created those insurgent forces. The documents are littered with references to analysts being spread out in various locations around the world, and the agency aspires to evolve into an expeditionary signals intelligence force. Expeditionary means they go to the operation zones. So they're not just sitting in their little office in wherever, Maryland or Hawaii, but they're sending them out to the ground.
What type of advantages would they have on the ground compared to sitting in Hawaii and observing with the methods they already have?
So there are a number of documents where NSA employees talk about having been deployed to war zones and being what they become is like a liaison between the tactical unit on the ground and the NSA back in America or wherever else.
That makes sense.
Yeah. There's also a video I was watching a while ago. It is the video of the massacre committed by Blackwater troops in Iraq, where they are on the rooftop of their compound and they're sniping hundreds and hundreds of Iraqi citizens who were protesting the killings of civilians in Iraq. Men, women, and children were killed in a massive amount. Now, that incident was covered in great detail in Jeremy Scahill's book, Blackwater, but I saw the live video shot by them. And in it, all of the guys in their team are shooting from this rooftop, some with shotguns, some with all different types of weapons, rifles, everything. And one of the guys in the video says, wow, he says, I was trained, they trained me in weapons, or I was given weapons training, but I've actually never, ever fired my weapon in combat. This is the first time. And all of the others start laughing at him. And they're like, oh, that's so funny. You've never fired your weapon. You've never killed anyone until today. And it turns out that he was the SIGINT guy. The reason he had never fired his weapon except in training is because he was the comms guy that had been assigned to this team. So this is the exceptional situation where the comms guy from the NSA ends up actually killing people in Iraq.
And that was with Blackwater, so that wasn't even with official military. That's with a paramilitary organization.
Exactly. So what that tells us is that these expeditionary SIGINT forces end up working with the contractors as well as with the military.
Yes.
Or the military total force, as designated by Rumsfeld, was specifically expanded to include contractors, private corporate agencies. So they were effectively integrated with the US military. But sure enough, there's your SIGINT guy firing his weapon for the first time with a bunch of Blackwater guys.
Interesting. And that's also it's like the opposite of seeing the CIA wanting to develop more NSA methods.
Yeah, instead, the NSA is actually, you're exactly correct. The NSA is actually being brought into these operations, physically having a staff member on the ground present.
So there's sort of definitely an overlap there in both cases between the two agencies as far as what they're trying to do and accomplish. So
NSA SIGINT results in capture and kill operations, and the agency sends expeditionary or contributes contributes employees as expeditionary forces to combat teams on the ground in war zones. Makes me sad whenever we start talking about this stuff. I literally feel like the weight of the people whose lives are destroyed by this stuff. It's not just black and white on a document on a piece of paper. These are real people's lives that are being affected by all of this.
Definitely.
Yeah, look, it says, sure enough, in the document, I met recently with 5 analysts who returned from serving in the first wave of cryptologic support teams deployed to Iraq, although I knew going into the meeting that they'd done much to assist our tactical forces in the region. I wanted to hear what they had learned on the job, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Post-Patriot Act intelligence sharing hubs known as fusion centres. Now, anyone involved with Occupy, Black Lives Matter, these types of groups will know about fusion centres. Fusion centres are these intelligence sharing hubs that were created right across America, and they don't just share intelligence with police agencies or private agencies even, but also with corporations like banks and oil companies. And wow. International, and they liaise with international organizations as well, have existed on American soil since at least 2006. If you type Fusion Centre into Wikipedia, the search result in the drop-down has a blurb which reads, Fusion Centres are owned and operated by state and local entities. They are not a product, this is where it gets scary, they are not a product of or under the control of the federal government. However, the SIDToday document reveals that there are, in fact, fusion centres operated by the military, specifically by the NSA. There is a specific reference to one being in Baghdad. More, there is another reference to a mobile fusion centre being established at the Olympics, and partially staffed by an expeditionary 8-man NSA team. This raises hugely significant questions, such as, did the very concept of fusion centres in fact come from the military? Why does Wikipedia insist in its description of them that fusion centres operating on US soil are non-military and not federal entities if the very concept is from the military, as is a portion of the data, because the data that is funneling into these fusion centres is coming from the state agencies, from the federal agencies? Is this because it is illegal for the military to operate on US soil? So that's why they're claiming that the fusion centres, which are using military data, are state or local entities rather than federal. If so, are they not in fact participating in the ventures anyway by feeding them information collected at military facilities by military resources? So it seems that designating fusion centres as being, or obfuscating them as being, state or local entities rather than federal is to try to get around the fact that military is not, in fact, supposed to operate on US soil. How on earth do we turn all that into one sentence?
No idea. Is this related? I remember a story about a quote unquote black site in, I think, Chicago during Obama's term. Now, is that related to this, or am I completely off topic?
I believe that the black site was actually Chicago PD related.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, so it was actually not a military facility, it was a police facility. There's another one somewhere as well. I'm pretty sure there was a second, I can't remember where now, but there was definitely a second one. but those black sites are effectively mimicking again, they're mimicking the military. So this is exactly what I'm saying is like, if we know that the military had fusion centers as far back as 2006, we know that they had one in Baghdad. We know that they established a fusion center at the Olympics. And we know that the NSA are staffing these fusion centers as well as other agencies. And we know that the fusion centers on United States soil are getting information from military databases. Then effectively, they're just mimicking military operations. And I believe that that's exactly what the Chicago PD black site was doing. It was mimicking the black sites that are in Iraq, that are in, the dozen countries that there have been renditions and CIA black sites in for years now.
And that follows the general trend of seeing the military and like local and state police crossing over so much just out in the open with the arming of police with military weapons and equipment. So it goes along with that whole trend of the militarization of police forces, for sure.
That is a really good observation. That is exactly correct. The police forces are mimicking the military. The fusion centers are mimicking the intelligence agencies. And neither are supposed to have a role on US soil. That reminds me of a DOD video that I wrote about. Oh my God, which article did I write about that in? It was a video that had been shared by The Intercept or sourced by The Intercept. It had been leaked to them. It was a strategic video from the DOD about how the urban centers are the future of warfare. The urban US centers are the cities, are the future, are the sites of future warfare. Where did I write about that in?
I believe I remember
I analyzed the language that was in the video, and I also analyzed the graphics that the language was set against. And I discovered a whole ream of it all ties into this militarization of the police force, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was very abundant. I mean, basically, it's the military saying that we know that our cities are where we will be conducting the war on terror. The West will become Iraq, effectively.
Yeah, that's... I feel like the adjectives get tired out. I mean, how many times can you say that's horrifying before it gets old and you just don't even know what to say anymore?
I think that's the same kind of feeling that the people who work in refugee camps get, or the people, when you're confronted with the reality, not with what CNN tells you, but with the actual reality, then that's the feeling that you get, definitely. Okay, so to summarize this, fusion centers were military military enterprises.
And they got, I think one of the essential parts of what you were saying about this is that
military enterprises
that are designed to get around rules preventing them from operating on US soil.
Yeah, they just set up a state or local agency and then give them everything they need to operate exactly like them, but then technically say, oh no, that's not us, that's state and the state or local entity. Fusion centers were originally military enterprises, much as US police forces imitate US military.
That's a good way to put it.
Fusion centers imitate US intelligence agencies. I actually have two references for that one. One is the fusion center in Baghdad, and one is the Olympics. Okay, next. There is perhaps no greater insight into the psyche of an expeditionary NSA staff member than that found within this document. It was authored by a female NSA staffer who was deployed to Iraq. Quote, "I'm in the military, we kill people and blow things up. It's our job."
Wow.
I don't know what else to say to that.
Yeah, there's really nothing you can say to that.
NSA sees itself as an integral part of combat. A female NSA staffer deployed to Baghdad said, "I'm in the military. We kill people and blow things up. It's our job." Get a new job. Honestly, that's all I can say to that.
And what's really bad about that too is she didn't even say enemies. She didn't even say threats. She just said
no. This is, we comply. We do what we're told. When someone says kill these people, okay, we kill these people. It's no problem. Then we go home and have lunch and like play some PlayStation.
Like there's just not even an attempt to hide the carnage that they're engaged with.
When friends are enemies and enemies are friends. In the days of Obama's pivot to Asia, it's hard to imagine that Chinese military officers would be hanging out in the halls of the Pentagon. But according to the Snowden document, they were in 2003. Now, this is another fascinating thing, because remember, China was not the number one threat.
Yeah.
Europe was the number one threat in the NSA strategy documents. European economic supremacy was the number one strategic threat to the United States. According to this document, let's have a little read. Welcome to the CSG Joint Staff at the Pentagon. Truly the place for people who want to be involved in providing support to the war makers, war fighters, and the decision makers. Located in the National Military Joint Intelligence Center in the heart of the Pentagon. Blah, 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 blah. There is no shortage of surprises to be found in the Pentagon. Simply walking through the hallways can be an adventure, seeing Chinese military officers, tourist groups, and television news reporters.
That is fascinating.
I once came upon General Myers and Mr. Tenet talking in the hallway with no minions or entourages in sight.
Yeah, this could be an entire article in itself, for sure.
I think every single one of these documents could be an entire article in and of themselves. That fusion center one, I could like easily.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The history of the fusion centers, where they're located, what they're doing, what the strategy behind them is.
How they fit that entire trend of militarization of American police.
Exactly.
And all of that.
Exactly. It's truly a most satisfying job experience. When our people go home from each shift, they know they have contributed to our national security. Until the war that they were told was over is still happening 13 years later.
Yeah, there's that. And then there's also like the military, like we were talking about earlier with suicide. There's a very, very high rate of suicide in these in military, people who serve in the military. So the idea that they're saying, oh, we have such great job satisfaction when that's happening is like, they just obviously have no level of like irony at all.
Is it the Pentagon's, was it National Intelligence Center or something? National Military Joint Intelligence Center.
Oh, that's interesting. The next point, sorry, I'm just skipping ahead. It says many companies are hesitant to hire spouses or family members, and the NSA is the opposite, because I remember that relating to the last stream we had. But.
James Case says there are people chilling, US people chilling in Chinese military facilities.
Huh.
James, do you have a reference for that? James, if you could provide links, that would be really cool. Like as a general rule of thumb, anyone who's making a claim like in chat would be really great if you can give us links.
Are people able to post links? I see somebody saying that they can't.
Really? Blake, can you get to the bottom of that for us, please? Okay, let's keep going because we're nearly finished this one. So where are we? Many companies are hesitant. Oh, this is the one I was telling you about in the last.
Yeah, that's what I skipped ahead and I looked at that and I was just,
many companies are hesitant to hire spouses or family members of existing employees. In fact, you can be like not hired because you're a spouse or family member, or you can be fired for dating a fellow employee or someone that you work with. The NSA is apparently the opposite. In this document, a second generation NSA employee. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Blake said.
Yeah, I just saw the message come up. A second generation NSA employee tells a story of a co-worker having 3 parents, mother, father, and stepfather, and a sibling, all working at the agency.
Yeah, I think the word you used last time was incestuous, and I think that's really perfect for this. And I think
God, imagine working with your husband and your ex-husband and your kid.
I mean, the amount of groupthink that would create is, again, mind-boggling. You know, I mean, how are you going to tell your brother or sister or parent or son that they've done a terrible job? You know, I'm just
in theory, I mean, in theory, surely they're like burst into different teams.
Yeah, but still, but the amount of, you know, the lack of diversity in thought processes you would have with that. I can't imagine that helps.
I mean, it sounds to me like it's easier for them to manage from a
control
insider threat perspective.
Yeah, that's
what it seems to be. It's like, well, if everybody that you're related to also works here, then maybe you won't like betray us or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you were talking about before. It's like
betray us, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like being called the company, or you know, it's like almost like they're the family, you know. So
the mafia.
Yeah.
Okay. The NSA is no stranger to. Oh, no, I've got a better one. The NSA is a family affair. One employee has their mother, father, stepfather, and sibling working. One employee's mother, father, stepfather, and sibling all work at NSA with them. Okay, and that's it for part 2. So now we can just briefly breeze over part 3, and then we'll try and do some more documents before we cut the stream. So where we're at with part 3. All right, NSA analysts who transcribe collections are colloquially known as scribes within the organization. One document helpfully lists the key lingo used by scribes and those who refer to them. Among the terms defined in the document, scribes use a foot pedal, a clarity. I don't think this is meme material, but it is interesting information. It's interesting because we need to know those terms in order to be able to decipher documents when we're studying them. It's a whole bunch that you can read if you want to, guys. Okay, while the NSA makes use of many custom tools, programs, and plugins, fundamentally the war on terror is being waged using Microsoft Exchange Server and Dell workstations, as well as Oracle databases.
That's a really great one to turn into a meme, I think.
Especially in like when you see like NSA getting hacked every 5 minutes, you know, like what's just happened with shadow brokers and stuff this time around. Like this is not like what you would expect. I mean, in a corporate sense, is what you would expect. In a most secure agency in the world, or what's meant to be, is not what you would expect.
Definitely.
I would expect entire custom architectures, like everything. I would not expect there to be proprietary solutions, corporate proprietary solutions in the world's most secure agency. Indeed, those databases are discussed in the context of a document about the usefulness of metadata over content, particularly in the context of chaining content information. So this is the same argument that Snowden made, which is that metadata is more useful to them than content. Okay. The same document let slip that in 2004, the NSA's intention was to store data, internet data for 7 years and telephony for 3, as opposed to the current day where it is believed that most information is now being stored perennially, which means forever, every year, all day, every day, week, month, year. It also states that the collection and storage of metadata is a growth area.
That is very corporate, as we were talking about before.
In fact, it's such a growth area that they've literally built a massive Utah data facility to handle that growth. Guess what technology the world's most secure intelligence agency relies on? Microsoft, Dell workstations, Oracle databases, and Microsoft Exchange Server. See, there was someone a while back who was talking about the GCSB in New Zealand using SharePoint, Microsoft SharePoint, which is like unthinkable, but apparently that's exactly what they're doing. And I can tell you too, like from my own software development experience, and we're talking today about like journalists getting kickbacks and stuff from politicians and whoever else. It happens in the software development industry. Like Microsoft all but bribes software development managers, procurement managers, IT managers they like take them to breakfast, lunch, conferences, give them this, that, and the other thing, like perk after perk after perk, bend over backwards for them. That's, you know, standard practice for their sales managers.
Yeah, that makes sense, but it's interesting to hear that actually happens.
Well, the idea that that's also happening in the intelligence agencies, you know, is one thing for like the corporate world to be susceptible to that, but to have intelligence agencies be susceptible to it is like next level.
Definitely.
Okay, we often hear in tech and activism circles about threat models, but the NSA have this down pat. In this handy document titled OPSEC and SID, Signals Intelligence Directorate, Some Answers, the NSA provides a helpful guide to assessing what critical information a potential target may be giving away about themselves, how to lower the risk of doing so, and alter their speech and behavior accordingly. Again, that's interesting contextually and very interesting if you're a target actually to read that. But it's not really meme worthy. The Signals Intelligence Directorate Deputy Director for Analysis and Production complained about the abject lack of space for employees. They are cramped. Okay. I'm distressed by the conditions in which many of our people are working, he writes in this memo to staff, stating he has passed the complaint up the food chain. You know, I think maybe we should like leave it here with the review stuff, because this is all the stuff now. We're now into the things that we've uncovered in the videos. Yeah. So I think if people want to learn about this stuff, they can go back and see the prior episodes that you and I have done together in this series on my YouTube channel. Because I would like us to cover some ground, and we're already at nearly 2 hours of stream, so some new ground. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff here, guys, that you can go through and read, and tons of references. This has already become the longest part, this article, and there's still a few findings from the last stream that I have not added in here yet, but which you can see if you go back and watch the last video.
Yeah, and likewise, I'm still working on the article, just summing up what we've already done in the first 2 sessions. So it's taking longer than I would like, but there's just a lot of information that we've already gone through. So
how are you going with it? Like, what are you writing up in it?
Well, I'm going through the previous 2 videos, and I'm just listening to the points that we brought up and talked about, and I'm researching them myself, and I'm going through and finding out any other relevant information I can grab. Like, for example, one of the things I looked at earlier today was the fact that we were talking about public broadcasts and SIGINT being able to target people like live streamers. I looked up SIGINT's definition of that, and they were talking about, news stations, communications, and they talked about enemy targets. They did not mention public broadcasts. So there's that, you can just see that difference between what they publicly say they're doing and then what they're privately saying they're doing. So that's the type of thing. I'm trying to add information to what we already looked at as I go through. So
that is really fascinating, because you're entirely correct, and that's like the same thing with that essay competition, right? They like use these intermediaries, and then there's this dislocation between what they're telling the public they're doing and what the purpose of it is versus what they're telling each other internally within these files, within these documents.
And that gap is what's so important to see.
Okay, just have a quick look and see if anybody wants in chat.
Can't wait for memes. Thanks, James. That'll be fun to be able to share them.
Can't wait for it's cute. Paul McGee, I will suppress my my innate response to your question. I will classify it. I will defer it for a later date. Oh, thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, the chat's been really busy this evening, so that's been really awesome to see.
I feel bad because I feel like I've not really kept up with it tonight.
Well, we've been going over stuff that's more just like individual bullet points as opposed to like researching, like you said, new material. So it's a bit of a different process.
Oh, that is so cute. That's so nice and so cool. Being complimented in the chat. Okay, guys, we're going to keep you for about another half an hour because I really want to get through some new documents. I don't want to, well, first of all, I can't monetize this YouTube channel yet because it's not over 10,000 views. Second of all, YouTube takes 2 months to hand over the money, and you have to get like $100 before they'll hand it over. Third of all, if I monetize, yeah, it does, James, but it's virtually impossible to actually get the money out of them. I know this from Internet Party's donations. It took us like literally months to get, and you had to build up the first $100 first. And then I am top, what is top bait? I don't even know what that is. But thank you. Thank you for saying that. If you want to donate, it would be extremely timely because I am not so secretly, I keep talking about how I'm secretly building something amazing at the moment. with the smell of or on the smell of an oily rack. If you want to donate, go to suzie3d.com, SUZI3d.com. You see my pool website hasn't been updated for a while because I've been snowed under doing other things. But if you click on the like donations page or whatever, oh look at awesome Blake. Blake has like a great macro or something. He's like hammering out the donation link.
Yeah.
If you want to send me Bitcoin, it helps me a lot. Obviously, if you want to send me money, that helps me a lot too, because I actually have no fixed income presently. So that would be really great and really helpful for me taking the next steps. And which, I mean, I'll do it anyway. I'm not one to quit just because I'm broke. I will keep going and keep building no matter what. But if you want to help to sustain me through that, eventually I might be able to afford a set of drawers that actually close. And then I can stop being trolled about the fact that my drawers are always open.
I didn't even notice that.
I have seriously had people ask me if it's a distress signal.
Wow.
I have, honest to God, seriously had people ask me if, like, the reason that certain drawers are open, partially open, and certain aren't. Like, if you look really mirror really carefully, you can see some drawers are stuck out. Actually, no, it's not a distress signal. It's because the drawers are really, 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 really old, and the runners are, like, ruined, and I am not a competent enough woodworker or handyman to work out how to fix them. So I just tolerate my like partially open drawers and then have actual conspiracy theorists dreaming up reasons why my drawers are partially open.
That's dedication, I guess. But yeah, I mean, and if anybody wants to donate now, it really would be a good time, because I know that Susie's working on an amazing thing. So it really is going to be awesome.
De-stress signal confirmed. Hammer time. Look, if you want to come to Moscow and hammer my drawers for me, that would be particularly appreciated, because it really sucks not being able to fix stuff. I have many competencies, and like home handymanship is not one of them. Sorry. It's to make sure no NSA agents are in them. NSA lives in my Mac, analysing why my drawers are open. They don't need to be in my drawers. They're looking for Snowden in my drawers. Cute. Okay, very, very cute. Okay, let's get a move on. Let's actually do some documents here. Okay, who remembers where we actually got up to last time? God knows.
Yeah, I don't even think I remember the exact document.
I'm just looking right now to find a productions manager, weapons space. We did this. Iranian hostage rescue mission. We got past this.
That was had been covered previously, right? So we skipped it.
Before and after Baghdad, we did that. Korea wartime support. Okay, I think here is where we're at. The new social functions calendar makes a debut. Okay, hold on, guys. And I'll reshare. God, I have so many notes.
I know that feeling.
There's so much. Right. New social functions calendar makes debut. Upcoming retirement ceremonies, open houses, and more. Okay.
That seems pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty
SIGINT, history of SIGINT. Oh no, insider's view of history, SIGINT appearing in the press.
Okay.
This was already reported on.
Okay.
Actually, I believe that I remember Binny making reference. I think it was Ray McGovern very recently made reference to this, which was Reagan directly releasing raw SIGINT information to the press when he needed to justify something that the government was doing. And the context that Billy McGovern was talking about this in was saying that if the NSA had proof of Russia hacking the US election, absolutely they could release that, and that there is a historical precedent.
Yes, I've heard him say that. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, I remember him saying that, and I've quoted it a couple of times because it's so it just throws so much shade at this idea that Russia hacked the election, but we have no proof, but believe us anyway. Just the idea that if there was proof, you could just so easily show it. And they haven't, so obviously there's probably nothing there.
Learned organization, we did that already. Yeah. Town meeting, we did. Crypto Linguistic Association. Did you ever meet President Reagan? What is this? They're asking a question.
From SIT.
Oh, they're asking this. Okay, they're asking the staff to respond to it.
Okay.
Afghanistan and this stuff was also reported on. I don't know what Intercept have like really specific topics that they always report on. Like if there's anything Iran or Iran-Contra related, they report on it. If there's anything like Afghanistan or Iraq related, they usually report on it. Oh, and there's an essay contest. Okay, keep going. Your summer seminar. I think we're a lot further through than I realized. The anti-imperialist camp. Okay, we definitely didn't do that. I have not seen that. Quick escape hood training.
Ooh, interesting.
Is ongoing. This is your opportunity to actually try on a training mask in a small classroom setting.
Wow.
The training is expected to continue through summer. Take 30 minutes of your day and do something for yourself. Escape hood. What the hell is an escape hood?
I have no idea.
The quick 2000 escape hood.
DL Mars.
Okay, guys, here's your first research task for today. Where's our chat? I never find a good place for stupid talk. Okay. Pirate pad. Blake, can you please add that to the pirate pad? Can you make sure there's a question, like literally question section in the pirate pad and list that question? And share the pirate pad, please, so that everybody, we should really have introduced that at the beginning so that people could look at it.
Yeah, that is so helpful when we're reading through and talking and then other people are adding to it. It's so helpful.
Really.
And it's really fun to see people come up with information that we don't even think of looking up, or just new facts and links.
And actually, I should have just given you the document name as well in there.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in hearing what this escape hood is and what escape hood training is.
Okay, next one. Something you can put your hands on. Trailblazer. Trailblazer was a very significant program. Do you want to just like quickly look on edwardsnowden.com, someone, there's a list of programs revealed, and I'm pretty sure Trailblazer was one of them.
I will try and look this up as well.
As fiscal year 2005 dawns and progresses, a total of 100 mission users at NSAW and 35 users from Crescent will test subsequent spirals, blah, 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 blah.
I'm also going to look up what an escape hood is, because I want to answer that question. Escape hood, Avon protection?
God, look, they use hunting and gathering as like their terms.
Trailblazer archives, okay.
Native viewing. Transformational capabilities such as single sign-on, single query across multiple knowledge bases, advanced storage, content summarization, and native viewing will all be demonstrated across a mission thread look. The beta version will demonstrate capabilities that enable the operational application of hunt versus gather.
Okay.
Hunt being operational and gathering being SIGINT.
That's amazing.
That's sick. And look, that's back to the left-hand, right-hand analogy again, isn't it? Like the hunter-gatherer. It's like the hunter is operational and the gathering is the SIGINT. Ugh.
Okay, interesting. Someone. The oversized hood covers the entire head and allows for donning over hair, eyeglasses, and facial hair. Huh.
It does what? Like, what is it? Is it like fire protection or like gas mask or like what? What is it? And why on earth do they need one?
I've got a brochure for one that's just taking forever to load. But that's probably more of a side curiosity than anything really important, I'm sure. But
oh God.
What are we looking at?
Strategic knowledge base, the target knowledge base.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
A knowledge base about targets.
So would a knowledge base be just a collection of all of the things we've already talked about and already know about with the information?
Knowledge base about targets would be like, okay, like going back into to give a corporate, and sorry, the reason I'm looking like this is because like my understanding of being a target is like ever evolving. Like I talked previously about how originally I thought, okay, well, I was targeted. Well, they had like one analyst like looking through my shit, you know, and that's it. Like, and then we discover that actually there's this whole like ecosystem of all these different teams and everything that are involved in the targeting and all the different applications, and different teams are working on different areas of your life and bringing that all together. It's so like, it's sick. It's really sick. I mean, okay, fine. If you're doing it to someone who actually is going to try and like bomb a city, I can live with that. But if you're doing it to like a journalist like me living in the suburbs and my kids and God knows who else, it's sick. It's disgusting. My take on a target knowledge base is that it is literally like when you have a customer, like imagine being like a call center rep at like a telecommunications company, you feed information about your customer into a knowledge base. Okay. This is what they purchased. This is what they're interested in. This is their communicate, you know, standard communications with us. They call us or they email us, and they on this base, you know, periodic basis, and they blah 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 blah. This, I assume, a target knowledge base is either going to be one of two things or both. One is information relating to how they're targeting, or two, information gathered from the targeting, so that rather than them having to go back through an entire case file and see absolutely everything, you know, when Joe Bloggs leaves the NSA and Jane Bloggs has been hired, Jane Bloggs can use the target knowledge base to answer her questions about the targeting of this individual. But then the target might not always be an individual. So I shouldn't just take it personally. It actually can be a target network, or it can be a class of target. In the case of GCSB in New Zealand, they're targeting locations. They're targeting classes of people, classes of individuals. But generally a knowledge base will be like an abbreviated version of the most key information that relates to that target.
Yeah.
Somewhere where you can find, it's like a Wikipedia, kind of like an internal like Wikipedia.
Yeah. I was wondering how much it would be just raw data, or if it would have some level of analysis as well.
It wouldn't be raw data to be a knowledge base. It might link to raw data. It might will link to external programs or places that you can find out more. But generally, it's kind of like an internal encyclopedia.
Okay, I see. That's a term I was not familiar with. So that's really interesting and horrifying.
The concept is to both give you more information, but to give it to you in a way that's easily digestible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
If they're bringing on a new person into one of these teams, then they need something like that.
And it's likely that multiple people will contribute to it.
Yeah.
Because it will need to evolve.
So the Wikipedia analogy is really good with that. It fits.
Yeah, usually a knowledge base is like standard operating procedures. So in terms of like how you're targeting or like what you're doing, but it can also be like a knowledge base is in like a collection of findings, like things that have already been ascertained, have already been concluded, are already known to be facts, links to more information, links to further information. This trailblazer stuff needs a lot more study, I think.
It needs multiple articles.
Can we please have a for more study later on section of the Pirate Pad, please, Blake? And can you please stick this document name in it? Requires further study. So basically the user testing.
Yeah.
At that point. Political action, the anti-imperialist camp. Playing the line between terrorism and political action.
Huh, interesting.
So they're saying are they suggesting that anti-imperialists are halfway between terrorists and...
That's what it sounds like.
The events of September 11th brought new urgency to the task of identifying it's exactly it. Identifying the dividing line between legitimate political activity and activity that is the precursor to terrorism, precursor to or supportive of terrorism. It's pretty basic, you know. I don't know why these intelligence agencies can't work this out. The difference is violent intention, okay? Not
intention.
Yeah, violence, like you're actually going to freaking kill people. Like the NSA documents are filled with violence, allusions to violence, talks of violence, planning for violence. I'm in the military, I bomb and kill people. That is violence. If you are targeting someone who's saying, I'm going to bomb and kill people, that is a terrorist. If you're targeting someone who says, I'm going to have a protest because I'm annoyed at Bank of America, that is not a terrorist. And this is the problem, is that they've deliberately blurred the lines between terror. It's not that people are no one is walking a line between being a protester and bombing people. It's like chalk and cheese. It's completely different things.
Absolutely.
And all of the movements I've been involved in and all of the actions I've covered, I've never once ever seen anyone think about, talk about, want to bomb people or kill people. Like, if you can't tell the difference between those two things, honestly, you're like blind, deaf, dumb, and stupid.
Well, the idea that they would say, just using that word intent as opposed to a different word like action or whatever, that just takes it to a whole different level of not having to prove that the person did anything wrong. They can just literally target anybody who's any kind of activist and say, well, their intent was violent, even if they didn't do anything.
Well, what they've done now is, and through the legislation in New Zealand, what they've done is they've watered down terrorist to threat to national security. And then they've defined a threat to national security as being not like someone who's going to bomb or kill people, but someone who is a threat to economic security, which is the profitability of major corporate institutions, which is, you know, a threat to the international relationships of the country. So New Zealand was allied with Saudi Arabia. So if you protest Saudi Arabia, you're now a threat to New Zealand's global relationships and therefore a threat to national security. That's and this is how they've lumped legitimate political dissent and legitimate political action into the terrorism bucket by simply changing the terms and changing the definitions.
Yeah.
Which is extremely lucrative, has the flow-on effect of being extremely lucrative for the network of private companies that are profiting off the targeting of people.
And just goes to what we were saying earlier about just the way that this is written and the way that these documents, what they're showing is that the intelligence agencies effectively control the world in this type of way, where they set this language up like that, and so that they could then act on it in ways that the average person wouldn't think maybe that they would or should. And that's why it's so important to look at these. I mean, we've said it 1,000 times, but that's why it's just critical that people understand what's happening in this situation.
This is evidence.
Yeah, exactly.
What we are looking at is evidence. Like they were saying before, they want to uncover war criminals. This is like evidence of the crimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And it goes with what you said earlier as well about the intentions being about protecting economics in general, like the NSA's its impetus is to have financial control. And so this goes along with that previous
session classification is top secret.
Interesting. I think
I always remember this photo I took of a woman at an anti-TPP action, and she had sewed this patch onto the back of her jacket. There's somewhere, it's published on Occupy Savvy in one of my posts, and it says, "Activism is not terrorism."
Yeah.
And what it almost seems like to me is these agencies are all cashed up on their post 9/11 budgets, you know, which we're seeing now how they obtain those budgets and how they maintain those budgets. They're all cashed up, particularly I'm talking about in the New Zealand, Canada, UK. They're cashed up and they need targets. And they don't have terrorists. There are not terrorists in New Zealand for them to spend their anti-terrorism money on targeting. So they use this, they blur the lines. Like here it actually says there's a line, raises questions about where political action fades into terrorism. No, it raises questions about where the intelligence agencies need political action to fade into terrorism so that they can justify using anti-terrorism budgets against activists.
Definitely. And then after that, claim that they need more funding to do the same. And then the cycle just...
We've identified A, B, C, D, F, G, potential terrorists.
Yeah, we need more funding to go after these people. Yeah.
And it's self-perpetuating. And then you throw the private agencies into the mix and it just like never ends. I mean, in New Zealand, I think I've talked about it before, like we've had like anti-sugar campaigners targeted. We've had like teachers who are involved in the teachers union targeted. Like literally a Save Our Schools campaign, Diane Khan from Save Our Schools in New Zealand was targeted. An education campaigner targeted because I guess she's a threat to charter schools for profit institutions. That all ties back into that economic security. Oh, it drives me nuts. It's sick. It's sick. What they do is they create a society that is where it is impossible to progress or to reform. because the extent that they are suppressing and repressing progress across the board, across every industry, in medicine and healthcare, medicine and healthcare and education and environment, and on and on and on. Even in technology, they target developers of competitive, disruptive technologies. They are halting human progress. They are making money out of halting human progress. And they are using this kind of language, political action fading into terrorism, to justify the halting of human progress.
Absolutely. I think that's a really amazing way of phrasing that. And I think that needs to be written down in that pirate pad or somewhere, because I think one of the most dangerous misconceptions people have is the illusion that we're in effective democracies in the West, and that the idea that our governments actually do represent the public in an effective way is actually, I think, the most harmful block for people to understand how desperately action and like activism needs to happen in order to actually have our say mean something.
This is how I've explained it to my own family.
Yeah.
Because my own family have said to me, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, why? Why did you become an activist? Why? Like, why couldn't... And I'm like, everything that we've ever been proud of in New Zealand has come from activism. Everything that we brag about, we in New Zealand, we brag about being first to give women the vote, first to legalize homosexuality, declaring ourselves nuclear free. Like these great social progresses that we've had throughout 150 years, every single one of them has taken people bleeding on the ground, kicked by police officers, like the suffragettes. I actually sat my daughter down and watched a documentary with her about the suffragettes so that she could understand. Because we've been taught in New Zealand, oh, it's so wonderful that women got the vote, as if it just happened, as if like
exactly, as if the government was fine with that. Yeah,
exactly, as if the government just said, oh, sure, what a great idea, let's give women the vote. No, women were beaten, they were stripped, they were divorced, they were arrested, they were killed in some cases in order to get the vote. This is the struggle that takes place to progress society. So to say, why are you doing this, is to say, I'm okay with human society not progressing, or worse, regressing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not okay with that. Like, I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with sitting quietly while disgusting things are done in our name. I'm not okay with that. Whether it takes my body on the line or whoever else's, it requires that self-sacrifice. All progress comes from self-sacrifice. All human progress comes from self-sacrifice.
Yeah, I think that the main block, I think most people would agree with that. It's just that I think most people probably don't understand the amount of struggle that had to take place for these things to happen, but that also has to right now, that they aren't living with suddenly friendly governments that are just going to roll over and listen to them when they want something.
We face like exile, or in extreme cases rendition, or whatever else, or even being killed, journalists being killed. You go back and look at the suffragettes, they were like put in iron masks, they had their tongues pierced, they had like literally like in the stockades in the public square, they were tortured and persecuted and killed. And now the entire world is proud that we've given women the votes, that that we have women's rights. Bloody Hillary Clinton, the worst warmonger on the face of the planet, going on about how the feminist movement has won all of these. She is an oppressor of activists. She is an oppressor of human progress. But even she will stand up and say, isn't it wonderful that we have equality for women and blah blah blah. So these things have to be progressed in spite of the power structure and in spite of the power.
Yeah.
If it takes like being exiled, so freaking be it. At least I can work here unimpeded. And I could not do that in New Zealand. In New Zealand, I honestly didn't think I would see the week out many, many weeks in my life. I didn't know if I'd make it to the next week. So, and maybe I still won't, I don't know, but at least I will have done my bit. At least I have that clean conscience.
Definitely.
Back to the documents. Again, this seems significant. I'm not particularly sure how to write it up, but it's really just further evidence. It's like supporting evidence.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing I notice here is it says its attempts to collaborate, its many ties to terrorist organization and its attempts to collaborate with Muslim extremists.
Okay.
Like how many ties to terror organizations and how many attempts to collaborate with Muslim extremists have we seen out of the US government in the last 5 years, 7 years?
A lot.
This is what they do. They ship arms, they provide funding, they collaborate with extremist groups, but at the same time, they justify their existence by supposedly suppressing groups that they say have ties to terrorist organizations or that attempt to collaborate with extremists.
Yeah, that it's that projection almost again.
That's the projection, and that is the self-justification.
The pretext for limiting people's ability to try to act in their own interest.
And where they say, and the extent to which otherwise legitimate organizations. When I read that, I think about NSA targeting UNICEF.
Yeah.
I think about them targeting Greenpeace. This is, so we have the projection, we have the pretext, as you say, and we have them admitting that they are targeting otherwise legitimate organizations.
Yeah.
Okay. So the key parts there.
And just the title, anti-imperialist, if they're going up against anti-imperialists and calling them terrorists, and that means that the NSA is sort of, in an odd way, admitting that they're imperialist.
Oh, well, yeah, because the anti-imperialists are, yeah, of course they are.
Yeah, they're the target. No, I know, of course they are, but I mean, to see the NSA admit it is interesting.
I would like to know more about the Vienna-based anti-imperialist camp. I would like to know if there is anything about these guys that actually could feasibly justify the types of things that are being said about them.
And also, if there's not anything that they can point to as an extremist action in any of these groups, I mean, we know for years and years there have been like these infiltration efforts. So if they don't have something that they can just point to as evidence, they'll go create it sometimes. I mean, that's just well known.
Bill Gates Jr. can go to hell. What have I been missing in the chat?
Yeah, the halting human progress is such a great phrase. And I think Assange alluded to that too when he said he was talking about, I think he was talking about the media though. He was saying that, you know, that we can do such great things as long as we're basing what we're writing and talking about on truth, and that, but we're limiting ourselves if we don't have truthful media. And it was a different conversation, but it was that same theme of potentially halting civilization or culture or progress.
Look, here's another thing. They say the events of September 11th brought new urgency to the task of identifying the dividing line between political. Well, why? Are you suggesting that on September 11th that the hijackers were activists?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no, they were not activists. They were actual terrorists. What about September 11th?
Had anything to do with
suggested that they needed to look at the dividing line of legitimate political activity. Nothing.
So it's just patently wrong. But what it is it's an excuse. They're basically saying September 11th gave us a pretext, an excuse for cracking down on activism in the US.
But how fascinating that we're talking about, what, 2004 here.
Mm-hmm.
In 2004, they're cracking down on activism. Because we all considered this as being like an Occupy, post-Occupy thing. But by the looks of it, they've been after the activists since well before that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would assume that they've been activists since decades ago, at least.
Well, I mean, they've been activists since the suffragettes and before that. But what I mean is that there's been a specific state agenda, right, as clearly as is stated here. Okay, just go fetch the insert link.
I'm interested to see what that Women in Mathematics Society is going to be about, if that hasn't been covered already.
There's your escape hood training.
Yeah, I looked it up, and it's an odd type of it looks like a gas mask if I got the right result for that. That's one of the things that I'm probably going to look up later to find out exactly what they meant.
I get so friggin' triggered, like really triggered when I see this, like the targeting of activists, because I have this first person understanding, and not just me personally, but all the activists I know, everyone I've seen. These aren't activists. It's not like you go to some activism school and study to become an activist and get a degree in activism. It's like, these are just people that give a shit.
Exactly.
People like from all walks of life, like elderly people, retirees, students, young people, middle-aged people who have kids, and they just care. They just care. There's nothing about them that requires military intervention. There's nothing that justifies military grade resources being used to target them. The power imbalance is so massive. Like the monetary and resource imbalance, the knowledge imbalance, it's like this gigantic bully picking on like tiny little ants.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it just shows how much control they want to have over everyone, and how much of a threat they see even just people willing to put in any time into protesting that amount of control. It's such a huge threat. It's such an overreaction.
I can't believe that they don't know that it's inappropriate and an overreaction to turn a military intelligence network against a stay-at-home mum or a student or an elderly person. I can't believe that they don't know that. They must know that, which means that if they're using it to target people who are just civilians, that either they've built something on a false pretext, which it seems to be, that they then need to use on anyone, in order to justify the existence of it.
Yeah.
Or that they really are so obsessed about control that they really do want to control even the thoughts and opinions of everybody on the planet.
I tend to think it's maybe a bit of both, but I tend to go more with the second conclusion, because you just see that type of overreaction in so many different areas that it seems to be a unfortunate theme that comes up. I mean, like we were saying earlier, the fact that how much they want to watch everyone. I mean, anyway, you got a long rant about that, but
yeah, the psychology of it is
the psychology
I would never understand. I've never in my life wanted to look in someone's window, look in, like, get into their business. Like, I find the whole thing is like creepy stalkerish.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, one more. The Crypto Mathematics Institute.
Yeah. I'll write that down as the last one we looked at for next time.
Thank you. That would be very helpful. Okay, so NSA very much had a crypto focus, obviously, in 2004. So it's one of these learned organizations that we've studied previously. It was established by a military guy, a director of the NSA, in 1957.
Yeah, I don't see too much from that unless you notice something.
No, it just shows that they have a long established interest in the development of cryptology, which is, part of the course, I would imagine, to the extent that this Crypto Mathematics Institute was actually established by a director of the NSA. And it also answers our question about the learned organizations actually like having the provenance be the NSA rather than just be independent third parties.
Yeah.
So these learned organizations are in fact educational institutes developed by the National Security Agency and likely funded by. One thing you have to give to them is that the spread of, like, I'm seeing this as a chart in my head, like all of these, the departments and then all of the various groups. I mean, you can see the structure from having read through all of these documents, from the directorates themselves and the divisions, and then all of the individual areas and the teams and the learned organizations and the corporate partners and the academics and they've literally got like a finger in every single pie. They have a very thoroughly developed infrastructure, not technical infrastructure, but an organizational infrastructure. And I guess that's what happens for billions of dollars over 70 years or whatever. 65 years. I guess it's like what? They would have had $500 billion in funding or somewhere around that. Okay, I think that's about all for today. Yeah. Look, we're so close to finishing this batch. So I think on Friday?
Friday. It's Tuesday, Friday.
On Friday, now that we've done our little recap for you guys today, on Friday, we're just going to do nothing but read documents. And I'm confident that we are going to get through all of those. I'm finally confident that we're going to get through all of them because there is only probably less than 20.
Yeah, and the other thing is that before we do that, on Friday, I'm really hoping that I'm going to get this article out before our next stream on Friday. So hopefully we'll have all that information there for people to look at they want to read it.
I think that we should not beat ourselves. This is the conclusion I come to. We should not beat ourselves up about when we get our stuff out.
Sure.
We should just do the best that we can, keep pushing it out, keep focused, but not emo about like when precisely we're going to do it. You know,
Yeah.
we will do it. But Friday will be awesome.
Yeah.
So Friday, I'd love to finish this batch because I haven't even laid eyes on the 4th batch yet. So I'm really keen to see what is in batch 4 and then what is in batch 5. I think it'd be really, really, really great. And then to do some kind of like recap video of all of the like key like once we have the memes, like we can sequence the memes and even have like 30 seconds of us talking about each meme or whatever and put it all together and release it. That would be really, really great.
Yeah, it would.
Very cool. Guys, do you have any questions for us? Virtually, I don't even know how to get like to put the candle wax on the drawers. I can't even manage to remove. I can't believe we're having this talk about my drawers again. Like my drawers have been this ongoing topic of conversation, like from anti-spy bill all the way through to Decipher you.
It's like, speaking of memes.
I need drawer memes.
Yes. But the chat has been really alive this evening. So thank you everyone who's been typing away and talking to us and stuff. It's been awesome.
Yeah, we have to get a graphic designer, James Case. Fortunately, we know a couple of cool ones to put together the memes and then we'll pump them out on the net for sure. Just keep an eye on, one appeal for you guys is if you could use the #DecipherYou hashtag, please. That would be really, really great. For commentary, I'd like to get to the point where we have a bunch of people live tweeting the sessions, like tweeting out the important pieces of information to the hashtag, and actually really use the hashtag. The other thing is that I have still the official @DecipherYou account, which is @CipherYou. If I can get someone to like someone awesome like Blake or someone else that's trusted, it will actually give you that account, and that would be really cool to have you like pump all the material out of on there. That would be very helpful. I'm not sure that memes are really my thing, but we'll try and do a good job. It's not really hashtag warfare. It's more, it's like almost like a research thing, because like then later it's if you can go back through the hashtag and find all the photos, all the videos, all the whatever on it, it becomes a lot more useful. Okay, guys, thank you very, very much for coming. We'll see you on Friday night, and we'll get through the rest of this batch.
Thanks, everyone. It's been a great evening. Huh?
Thank you for being you.
No problem. Glad to be here. Thank you for all the work you've done and are doing. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's all good.
All good.
We were only 4 minutes late.
Awesome. No, that was good.
So somebody once told me that Americans like have the expectation that you'll be either 10 minutes early or 10 minutes late, and that's the reasonable like thing. Whereas in New Zealand, if we say I'll be there in 15 minutes, it tends to be like 2 hours. So or if we say 2 minutes, it's like 20 minutes. So yeah, I feel a little bit like a slightly better person for actually managing to show up only 4 minutes late. So I will keep trying to whittle that time down until I am bang on time.
Awesome.
Okay, love to everyone.
Thanks everyone. It's been awesome.
Blake, you can get anyone involved you want to, more the merrier. Okay, thank you guys. Good night.
Bye.